Help me, please. My husband and my in-laws only see me as a tool." The woman who suddenly showed up claimed to be my younger brother's wife. I haven't been home in years and have had no contact with my family. Unbeknownst to me, my family had been acting in ways that could be called heartless. Now that I know, there's only one course of action for me to take. My name is Kelly. I'm 28 and live alone. I moved out after high school. I currently live in a town not too far from my childhood home, but I haven't been back in years. Since leaving, I've had minimal contact with my family and have made it this far without their support. That's because after high school, I cut ties to the bare minimum with my family. I grew up feeling unloved by my parents, and I don't think highly of them either. I was born as a first child to my dad, who runs his own business, and my stay-at-home mom. My memories of my family home are filled with days of suffering. My old-fashioned, domineering dad wanted a son who could take over the family business. So, he never really showed me much love as his firstborn. Girls will eventually leave home and are useless. That's what Dad would always say dismissively. It would have been better if it were just Dad, but Mom seemed to share the same sentiment. I was treated like I was invisible from a young age. I don't think they completely neglected me. I was fed every meal, and although they were hand-me-downs from relatives, I had the clothes and basic necessities for life. But that's about it. I don't remember receiving anything more. I've never been taken anywhere special, never had birthdays celebrated. I've never felt cherished by my parents. I did feel lonely, but that was my normal, so I never thought much of it. However, when I was about 4, Mom gave birth to my brother Sam. Everyone was overjoyed that a long-awaited son was born, not just my parents but also grandparents and relatives. Especially Dad, who was elated like I'd never seen before. Mom was always glued to Sam, and both parents were clearly smitten. That's when I realized the difference in how I was treated. I probably wasn't celebrated. When I was born, I thought, and it made me sad. So, the birth of Sam wasn't exactly a happy occasion for me. It's not that Sam wasn't cute, but I was confused about how to relate to him, who was treated so differently from me. And my parents, who had never paid attention to me, became even worse after Sam was born. They wouldn't even wish me a happy birthday, but for Sam, they'd reserve fancy restaurants and buy expensive gifts. If Sam wanted to take lessons, he could take any he wanted, while I wasn't allowed to take any. Of course, tutoring was out of the question, and while Sam went to private school, I was sent to public. Everything revolved around Sam, and it was as if I didn't exist. The more I compared myself to Sam, the more miserable I felt. Struggling with this blatant disparity, I decided to distance myself from my family. After graduating high school, I planned to go to a college far away and move out. But when I expressed my desire to go to college, my parents quickly shut it down. They said, a woman doesn't need an education. Of course, they wouldn't provide any financial support for me to move out. That was their answer. Meanwhile, they were spending both time and money on my brother Sam's education and extracurricular activities. I started to despise the fact that I was born a girl. In the end, my parents wouldn't listen to me at all, so I gave up and moved out as soon as I graduated from high school. I spent a year saving up money for college entrance exams and eventually got a scholarship to attend college. Of course, my parents didn't send me any money, so I worked part-time to support myself. Balancing part-time work and studies was really tough. But I managed to graduate and get a job. Since leaving home, I've had almost no contact with my parents. They never reached out, and I didn't either. I did inform them when I got a job, but all I got was a, "Oh, okay," without even a congratulations. I always knew my parents didn't love me, but it still saddens me to think about it even now as an adult. However, they did raise me until I graduated from high school, and for that I was grateful. So I would send simple celebratory messages on their birthdays or Christmas. But without regular contact or visits home, my relationship with my family became increasingly distant. Living this way, I realized 3 years had already passed since I started working. Nowadays, I barely even think about my family. Then, one Saturday morning, while I was sleeping in because it was my day off, my doorbell rang. Groggily, I opened the door to find a frail-looking woman I didn't recognize. She was wearing faded, hole-ridden clothes, and her hair was a mess. Her skin was rough, and she had dark circles under her eyes. Excuse me, but who are you?" She looked considerably aged, but also young upon closer inspection. I cautiously engaged with this unexpected visitor. I felt a tense atmosphere coming from her, almost frightening. I'm your brother's wife. I'm sorry to barge in like this, but please help me." The woman standing at my doorstep pleaded in a frightened tone. "Sam's wife? What is she talking about?" My brother is single. Are you sure you have the right house?" I regretted opening the door, thinking a strange person had come to my home. Even though I was half asleep, I realized I had been careless. "Yes, I do have a brother, but he's not married." I thought she had the wrong person and was about to close the door. "Wait, please. You're Sam's sister, right? I really am married to Sam. You weren't invited to the wedding, so this is our first meeting." Sam, that's indeed my brother's name. Hearing that name, I paused, my hand stopping mid-air as I was about to close the door. "You're really married to Sam?" She said I wasn't invited to the wedding, but was Sam really married without even telling me? It wouldn't surprise me if my parents and Sam were capable of such behavior. I decided to listen more closely to what this woman, who claimed to be Sam's wife, had to say. "They told me I don't need to be involved in family matters, so there was no need to invite you," she said, struggling to get the words out. Her name seemed to be Michelle. She then went on to prove her identity by talking about my family and her marriage to Sam. I became convinced she wasn't lying. What she described about my parents and Sam matched my own memories. "What did you mean when you said you needed help? Come in, and let's talk." Since she had come empty-handed, I judged that Michelle wasn't a threat and invited her into my home. She began to explain why she had come to see me. "I'm sorry to barge in on you like this, especially since we've never met. But I thought you'd be the only one who'd understand the craziness of that household. I found your address from a letter you sent and came here." Michelle spoke slowly. Her married life back home must have been extremely difficult. She had come to my house without even her valuables. "I'm treated like a tool in that house. I'm forced to work non-stop without pay at your dad's company. They say it's natural for a woman to work for a man. Of course, women work for men. That was a line I'd often heard from my dad. Michelle was originally an employee at my dad's company, where she met Sam and got married. She continued to work there after marriage, but stopped receiving a salary and started getting harassed by my mom. Sam wasn't helping her at all, and she had reached her breaking point. Hearing this, I was shocked but not skeptical. Sadly, it seemed like something my family would do. In that house, a woman's status is incredibly low. I thought that's why you weren't invited to the wedding and why you never come home. She had tried to escape from the house several times, but was always brought back. So she took a chance and came to me for help. I don't have a phone or any valuables. They took them all, so I left the house early in the morning and walked here. My parents and Sam had gone on a trip, leaving Michelle behind. They took her valuables to prevent her from escaping. Yet, she had walked what must have been 3 hours to seek my help. So, that's why you're here, looking so worn out. I'm sorry you had to go through this because of my family, I said. Tears welled up in Michelle's eyes as she finished her story. I felt her pain deeply. I understand your situation. For now, you should go back home. I know it's hard, but you'll have to endure it for a bit longer. It was a tough decision, but I sent Michelle back to her family home. However, I made one promise with her. That was to meticulously gather evidence of her current situation. If what she was saying was true, I couldn't just let it go, even if they were family. I also saw a reflection of my younger self in Michelle. I thought that saving her would be like saving myself. I gave Michelle some instructions and sent her back to her family home. Hang in there, okay? I promise I'll help you, I assured her. Michelle nodded firmly at my words. We shook hands tightly and went back to our respective homes. A few weeks later, Michelle showed up at my house again early in the morning. She had gathered as much evidence as she could since our last meeting. I used that evidence to contact OSHA, and an investigation into my dad's company was promptly initiated. On the same day, I returned to my family home with a lawyer and Michelle. Just seeing the exterior of the house brought back unpleasant memories. Honestly, it made me feel sick. But as we entered, there were my parents and Sam, looking pale and confused. Long time no see. Seems like something serious is going on. What happened? The three of them were visibly shocked as I walked in. It must have been confusing for them to see me return after so many years, especially with Sam's wife. I explained everything from the beginning to the silent trio. I've heard everything from Michelle. You guys are as terrible as ever. What do you think women are? Michelle will be getting her back pay and will be seeking damages for the way you've treated her. I introduced the lawyer who had accompanied me. The moment they heard the word lawyer, my dad lashed out at me. Wait a minute, did you set this all up? What are you meddling in? My dad yelled at me, and behind him both my mom and Sam glared. Isn't it strange to make someone work without pay? What you are doing is domestic abuse, making her work and then dumping all the household chores on her. Are you guys okay in the head? For the first time in my life, I stood up to my parents. It felt like everything I had been holding back was finally pouring out. Women should work quietly. It's only natural. Can't you understand something so simple? Don't interfere in our family matters. You left this home. So, to my dad, I was neither a daughter nor family, but a stranger. I had my own feelings about my family, but that single sentence erased them all. People who are terrible stay terrible. I'm relieved you haven't changed. Now I can fight you without any reservations. When they found out I was the one who contacted OSHA, this time Sam lost it. My parents remained silent, probably never expecting their daughter who had left home to do something like this. Nor did they expect Michelle, who had thought they had under control, to take such actions. They probably never considered how much they were pushing people to the edge. They were more concerned about what would happen to their company, lashing out in anger. It made me realize once again that these people only think about themselves. "What the hell are you betraying us for? You got to marry me, a privileged man. What more do you want?" Sam, who had been yelling at me, now turned his anger toward Michelle. We had come to demand compensation for the harassment Michelle had endured, the unpaid labor, and the mistreatment from these people. "I can't take this life anymore. I want a divorce, and since you've made it impossible for me to escape on my own, I turned to Kelly for help." Michelle firmly told Sam about her intention to divorce him. We didn't come back to the family home to argue. We came to demand compensation for the harassment and unpaid labor Michelle had endured from this family. When the lawyer handed over his business card, even the furious Sam seemed to regain some composure. Like my parents, who were at a loss for words, Sam's face turned pale. The lawyer calmly discussed the next steps, ignoring their reactions. He informed them that we would be seeking damages based on the evidence Michelle had gathered and would take the matter to court if the compensation wasn't paid. Suddenly, Sam, who had been yelling just moments ago, began to apologize. "Wait a minute. Court? Is that really necessary? I didn't mean for things to get this far. I'm sorry." My parents awkwardly apologized behind him. But it was too late for apologies. "We're not here to listen to apologies. Saying sorry now won't heal my wounds. You have two options: divorce me and pay the compensation, or we go to court. Choose whether you want to pay now or after losing in court." Michelle stated this clearly. Ignoring the dejected trio, we left the family home. As for my parents, they remained silent throughout, and I have no idea what they felt toward me. But it doesn't matter to me anymore. They were quite humble, possibly fearing they might be sued for damages, but I have no intention of showing them any kindness. I've told Michelle not to hold back either. Later, the lawyer spoke on our behalf to Sam and my parents, and eventually they agreed to pay Michelle the compensation, splitting it between my brother and parents. Of course, my brother and Michelle divorced, and she was finally paid her overdue wages from my dad's company. Our retribution ended there, but the real consequences for Sam and the others were far worse. Apparently, the news about the divorce and the OSHA investigation spread like wildfire, becoming known to almost everyone involved. In a tight-knit community like San Diego, it didn't take long for rumors to spread. The fact that they had been treating Michelle like a slave didn't sit well with most companies, and they were largely shunned. My dad's company wasn't that big to begin with, and with halted transactions, bankruptcy seemed inevitable. They tried to recover by taking out loans, but no one was willing to help them anymore. They eventually went bankrupt, leaving my dad with a mountain of debt. They had no choice but to sell the family home and move to an unknown location. Sam started living a part-time life, and despite his youth, he had really hit rock bottom. To repay the debt they couldn't cover even after selling the house, the three of them had no choice but to work together, a group of terrible people united in their misery. Sam, who had been arrogantly assuming he would inherit my dad's business, was now working under a younger part-time leader. My dad was finding it hard to get work, hindered by his age and pride. My mom, who had lived a life of leisure as a housewife, had become a financial burden and a source of stress for both Dad and Sam. I couldn't help but laugh at this turn of events. I have no intention of helping them, as there is no emotional bond between us. Let them decline and realize just how terrible they've been. After that, I cut off all ties with Sam and my parents. I moved right after this incident to avoid any surprise visits, as they knew my address. That should sever all connections with them. Michelle also moved to a new place and started a new life. She looks healthier and happier than when we first met. She said that being able to live for herself now is the greatest happiness. Seeing her reminded me of myself when I left home. I doubt I'll ever see that family again. I'll quickly forget those dreadful memories and continue to live in an environment where I'm valued.